The package at my door. I still remember the exact sound it made, a soft scrape, like paper sliding across concrete. I was sitting on the couch with a cold mug of coffee in my hand, staring at my phone, trying to pretend the silence in my apartment didn't feel heavier than usual. That's when the envelope slid under the door. It wasn't pushed. It didn't flutter or hesitate. It moved with deliberate pressure, like someone was kneeling just inches on the other side, guiding it carefully. I didn't move it first. Something about it felt wrong, like a sudden change in air pressure you can't see, but can feel in your bones. My building is old. Doors creak, pipes groan, and the hallway lights flicker like they're deciding whether to live or die. But this wasn't part of the usual background noise. This was precise, intentional. Someone was right there, on the other side of my door. I waited. I don't know what I was waiting for. Footsteps, breathing, maybe the scrape of shoes on tile. Anything to prove there was still a normal person out there, but the hallway stayed silent. No footsteps walking away. No elevator. No voices. Just a hum of fluorescent lights and my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. After a minute, I set the coffee down and stepped forward. The envelope was plain white. No stamp. No return address. No handwriting on the outside. Just a thin rectangle of folded paper inside. The flap wasn't sealed, just tucked. Whoever left it wasn't trying to hide anything. They wanted me to open it. I told myself it was probably a mistake. Someone delivering to the wrong apartment. A neighbor playing a prank. A landlord notice printed on cheap paper. Normal things. Normal explanations. But my hands still felt colder than they should have as I picked it up. Inside was a single sheet of paper, not handwritten. Typed, the letters were bold, black, and perfectly aligned. Not like a personal note, more like a printed instruction manual. The kind of thing you get with a new appliance. Only there was nothing ordinary about what it said. Do not leave your apartment for 30 days. That was the first line. No greeting. No signature. No explanation. Below it were more lines, each one spaced evenly, like rules meant to be followed without question. Do not open the door for anyone. Do not answer calls from unknown numbers. Do not trust voices outside the door, even if they sound familiar. Keep lights low after sunset. Record anything unusual. Survive 30 days. That was it. No threats. No warnings about what would happen if I didn't listen. Just instructions. Calm, mechanical instructions, like whoever wrote this assumed I would follow them without argument. I read it 3 times. My brain kept trying to reject it, to file it under joke or mistake, or someone's weird idea of a game. But the longer I stared at it, the more my body reacted in ways my mind didn't want to admit. My throat went dry. My pulse started climbing. My skin felt tight. I laughed once, a short, shaky sound that didn't feel like humor at all. Yeah, I muttered. Very funny. But I didn't throw the paper away. I folded it back up and set it on the kitchen counter. Like if I didn't destroy it, the message might somehow make more sense later. Then I walked to the door, pressed my ear against the wood, and listened. Nothing. Just the hum of the building, the soft vibration of distant pipes, and the faint buzz of the hallway light. No footsteps. No whispering. No sign of whoever had been close enough to slide that envelope through. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt watched. And I had no idea that the moment that envelope crossed my doorway, the countdown had already started. Ordinary life begins to tilt. I didn't sleep that night. The note sat on the counter, folded exactly the way I'd left it, like a silent weight pressing down on the room. I kept glancing at it from the couch, waiting for the feeling to fade. It didn't. Morning came slowly. The sky outside my window was the color of dirty water, heavy and still. The street below looked almost normal. A parked delivery truck, a woman walking a dog, 2 men arguing beside a taxi. Normal things. Familiar things. I told myself that meant everything was fine. I almost convinced myself. I picked up my phone and opened my group chats. Nothing unusual at first. Complained about work, memes, someone ranting about rising rent. But as I scrolled, I noticed something subtle. Messages I remembered seeing last night were missing. Whole conversations gone. No trace. Not even a message deleted notice. I frowned and refreshed. Still gone. I checked the local news. A headline I'd seen yesterday. Something about a hospital incident on the east side. Wasn't there anymore. Not buried. Not updated. Just gone, like it had never existed. I told myself it was a server issue. A glitch. Maybe I was misremembering. But that didn't explain the quiet. By noon, the building usually came alive. Doors opening, footsteps in the hall, music from the guy upstairs who never used headphones. Today, the silence felt wrong. Not peaceful. Pressurized, like the air was being held still on purpose. I tried calling the property manager. Straight to voicemail. I called my mother. No answer. I called my friend Marcus, the guy who never ignores a call. It rang once, then disconnected. No voicemail. No error tone. Just dead air. A chill moved through my chest. I told myself it was a network outage. Towers go down sometimes. It happens. I went to the window again. The street looked different now. The delivery truck hadn't moved. The same two men were still by the taxi, but they weren't arguing anymore. They were standing too close, facing each other, not talking, not moving, like they'd forgotten what they were doing. I watched them for a full minute. Neither blinked. Something tightened behind my ribs. I looked down at the sidewalk. A woman stood across the street, facing my building. Not the street. Not the cars. The building. She wasn't checking her phone. She wasn't smoking. She just stood there, staring up at the windows. At my windows. My pulse climbed. I stepped back from the glass. That's nothing, I whispered to myself. You're overthinking it. I forced myself to make coffee, trying to regain some sense of normal rhythm. The machine hissed and rattled, and the sound felt too loud in the silence. My hand shook just enough that the mug rattled against the counter. I told myself again, nothing is happening. Everything is fine. But my eyes kept drifting to the door. At exactly 12:17 p.m., the lights flickered. Just once. Quick. Sharp. Then again. The hum in the walls deepened. A low electric thrum, like something straining behind the concrete. My chest tightened. Then a sound. Not from inside my apartment. From the hallway. A footstep. Slow. Deliberate. Then another. Closer this time. I didn't move. I barely breathed. The footstep stopped directly outside my door. A pause. Long, heavy. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then a voice, soft, almost gentle, spoke through the wood. Hey, can you open up? My lungs froze. The voice sounded like Marcus. But Marcus didn't know where I lived. And I hadn't told anyone about the letter. First unsettling pattern. I didn't answer. My entire body went rigid, every muscle locking in place like I'd been submerged in ice water. I stood in the middle of my living room, staring at the door as if staring hard enough could somehow force the situation to make sense. The voice came again. Hey, it's me. Open the door. It sounded like Marcus. Not just similar. Exact. Same tone. Same rhythm. Even the slight rasp he had when he was tired. Every instinct screamed that it was him. But logic fought back. Marcus didn't know my apartment number. He'd never been to this building. He lived across the city, nowhere near here. And even if he somehow found my address, he wouldn't just show up unannounced, let alone sound this flat, because there was something wrong with the voice. It was too smooth, no breath, no hesitation, no background noise, just words, placed carefully into the silence. I swallowed, my throat tight. My hands were trembling, so I shoved them into my pockets to hide it, even though there was no one to see. Another knock. Not urgent. Not aggressive. Just slow, deliberate tapping, like someone imitating what a knock was supposed to sound like. Tap, tap, tap. My mind flashed back to the note. Do not open the door for anyone. Do not trust voices outside the door, even if they sound familiar. The memory hit me like cold water. I forced my voice to work. Go away. Silence. For a second, I thought it was over. Then the handle rattled. Not violently. Just a small test. Like someone checking if it was unlocked. My heart lurched so hard it made my chest hurt. Come on, the voice said. Still calm. Still familiar. Just open the door. It's important. The way it said important made my stomach twist. Too neutral. No emotion behind it. Like someone reading a word instead of feeling it. I took one step back. Then another. The floor creaked beneath me, and I immediately froze, regretting the sound. The rattling stopped. The presence outside went still. I imagined someone standing there, ear pressed to the door, listening to me breathe. Seconds stretched. My pulse hammered in my throat. Then the footsteps started again, slow, dragging slightly, retreating down the hallway. One step, then another, fading, gone. The hallway returned to silence. But I didn't move. I stayed rooted where I was waiting, because part of me was sure this was a trick, that if I relaxed even a little, the handle would turn again. Minutes passed, maybe 5, maybe 20. Time felt elastic, stretching and contracting unpredictably. When I finally exhaled, my lungs burned. I backed away slowly until my legs hit the couch. Then I sat, my knees weak. My mind kept looping the voice, the cadence, the phrasing, the emptiness in it. That wasn't Marcus. It couldn't have been. I forced myself to think clearly. I needed to confirm something. Anything. I grabbed my phone with shaking fingers and opened our message thread. I typed, "Where are you?" I hit send. The message didn't show delivered. Not failed either. Just suspended. Like it was trapped somewhere between leaving and arriving. I stared at the screen for a full minute, willing it to change. It didn't. The air in the apartment felt thicker now, pressing down on my skin. My ears strained for sound, but the building had gone unnaturally quiet again. No pipes, no footsteps, no distant traffic, nothing. I glanced at the door. The letter's words echoed again in my mind, clearer now, sharper. Do not open the door. Do not trust voices. A realization slid into place, cold and precise. Whoever sent that note knew this would happen. Not might happen. Would. Which meant two things. 1, this wasn't random. 2, whatever was outside, my door wasn't a stop. And I had no idea how long I could keep pretending I was safe. Testing the rules. For a long time, I didn't move. I sat on the couch with my elbows on my knees, hands locked together so tight my fingers hurt. I kept replaying the sound of the handle rattling, the voice that wasn't quite right, the way the footsteps had dragged away instead of walking normally. Eventually, my breathing steadied. My thoughts didn't. I needed to know what was real and what wasn't. Fear feeds on uncertainty. If I could prove something, anything, I could at least pretend I had control. I forced myself to stand. The apartment felt smaller now. The air was thick, the kind that makes your lungs feel full before you finished inhaling. Every little sound seemed exaggerated. The refrigerator humming, the floor settling, my own heartbeat in my ears. I approached the door slowly, like it might move if I rushed it. I didn't touch the handle. I didn't get too close. I just listened. Nothing. No breathing. No footsteps. No presence. I leaned closer, pressing my ear to the wood. Still nothing. I told myself to be logical. Whoever, or whatever, had been outside could have left. I couldn't let panic turn the entire world into a threat. People go into fight or flight when they're afraid. They hallucinate patterns. They imagine danger. I needed to test reality, not assume it. I unlocked the deadbolt but left the chain fastened. The small metallic click felt impossibly loud. My chest tightened as I turned the handle. The door opened 2 inches before the chain stopped it. Cold hallway air slid in, thin and stale, smelling faintly like dust and something metallic. The corridor outside was dim. The overhead fluorescent lights flickered in slow pulses, like a heartbeat struggling to maintain rhythm. No one stood in front of my door. No shadow on the floor. No figure pressed against the wall. Relief loosened something inside me for half a second. Then I saw the smear on the wall opposite my door. Dark, almost black in the weak light. It wasn't a random streak. It looked dragged, like something had been pulled along the wall, leaving a trail. The edges were uneven, as if whatever made it hadn't moved smoothly. My throat tightened. I leaned a fraction closer, trying to make sense of it. It could be anything: grease, water damage, paint. My mind grabbed for mundane explanations, desperate to stay anchored. Then I noticed a shape near the end of the smear. 5 lines. Long, thin, uneven, like fingers dragged slowly downward. My breath stalled. A sudden sound snapped my focus. A soft creak further down the hall. Not loud, not dramatic, just a subtle shift of weight, like someone adjusting their stance. I froze. The flickering light stuttered, then steadied for a heartbeat. At the far end of the hallway, near the stairwell door, something stood half in shadow. Too still, too upright, too patient. I didn't blink. My brain tried to force the shape into something human. Something explainable. A neighbor, a stranger, a lost person. But something about the posture felt wrong. The shoulders were uneven. The head was tilted too far to one side. Then it moved. Not toward me. Not away. It shifted sideways, a single smooth motion, and slipped out of sight behind the stairwell door. My stomach dropped. I shut the door without thinking. The chain snapped taut, though it thudded against the frame. My breath came shallow and fast. I locked the deadbolt with shaking hands, then pressed my forehead against the door, trying to slow the panic climbing up my spine. I didn't know what I had just seen, but I knew one thing with terrifying clarity. The instructions weren't paranoia. They were survival. And whatever was outside my apartment, it wasn't gone. The first violation. I backed away from the door slowly, as if distance could undo what I'd just seen. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept replaying the image in my head, the shape at the end of the hall, the unnatural tilt of its head, the way it moved without sound. Every rational explanation collapsed the moment I tried to hold it up. I forced myself to breathe. Slow, controlled, quiet. The apartment felt wrong now, like the walls had shifted an inch closer without me noticing. I tried to focus on normal things, the hum of the fridge, the pattern of the floorboards, the ticking of the clock, anything to ground myself. Then the knocking started again, soft at first. Tap, tap, a pause. Then again a little firmer. Tap, tap, tap. My throat closed. I didn't move toward the door this time. I didn't speak. I barely let myself breathe. I just stood there, heart pounding, eyes locked on the handle. The knocking stopped. Silence stretched. Then a voice, muffled through the wood. Please, I know you're there. Not Marcus this time. A woman's voice. Shaky, breathless, almost breaking. My instincts twisted. The sound hit something deep, an automatic reflex to help, to open the door, to comfort. The voice cracked like someone holding back panic. I need help, she whispered. Please, I can't be out here. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. The note flashed in my head again. Do not open the door for anyone. Her breathing came ragged. Too close to the door, I could hear the uneven hitch in her chest, the faint scrape of something dragging lightly against the floor as if she were struggling to stay upright. Every part of me screamed to help. Every instinct warned me not to. Please, she begged. It's cold. I just need to come in. Just for a minute. My hand twitched. I took one slow step forward before my mind caught up with my body. I stopped mid-step, dread blooming in my stomach. Something wasn't right. She hadn't said my name. She hadn't explained how she knew I was inside. And the way her voice shifted on certain words, too controlled, like emotion pasted over something hollow. I stayed silent. The woman inhaled sharply, almost a sob. You can hear me, she said quietly. Not a question, a statement. The words made my skin crawl. I didn't answer. Silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. Then, so softly I almost missed it, she whispered, Why won't you open the door? The way she said it wasn't pleading anymore. It was curious. My stomach tightened. I swallowed, pulse hammering. Go away. I forced out, my voice thin but steady enough to carry. A long pause. Then the sound of something dragging lightly across the floor, slow, deliberate, moving away from the door. I didn't move. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on my chest. My heart thudded so loudly I thought she might hear through the wood. Minutes passed. The hallway remained silent. I told myself it was over, that she'd gone. But I didn't believe it. I didn't believe anything anymore. My legs finally gave in, and I sat down on the floor with my back to to the wall opposite the door. My hands shook, so I pressed them together, trying to steady them. I don't know how long I sat there. 5 minutes. 10. An hour. Time felt slippery. When I finally looked up, my gaze fell on the envelope on the counter. The instructions seemed heavier now, no longer mysterious or vague, but deliberate, specific, written by someone who knew exactly what would happen. Whoever wrote that note had expected this, expected the voices, expected the pressure to open the door, expected me to be tested. A cold realization settled in my chest. The real danger wasn't just what was outside. It was how easily it could convince me to let it in. The night shift, night came early. Or maybe it just felt that way because the light never really came back. The sky outside my windows dimmed to a dull gray that never brightened, then sank straight into darkness without a sunset. It felt like the day had been swallowed whole. I didn't turn on the main lights. The instructions had said to keep them low after dark, and for the first time, I wasn't willing to test it. Instead, I turned on the small desk lamp in the corner and pulled the curtains shut, leaving only a narrow gap so I could still see a sliver of the street. The apartment shrank in the dim light. Shadows pooled in the corners like they were waiting for something. The faint yellow glow of the lamp made everything look old and brittle, like a photograph left too long in the sun. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, facing the door. My phone sat beside me. No signal. No messages. The screen reflected my own face back at me. Pale, eyes ring dark, jaw tight. I barely recognized myself. I tried the radio again. Static. I turned the dial slowly, hunting for anything. Voices, music, emergency broadcasts. The static shifted in pitch, sometimes rising into a shrill whine, sometimes dropping into a low rumble. Once, I thought I heard a fragment of a voice, 2 syllables buried under noise, but when I turned the dial back, it was gone. My heart jumped anyway. The building made small noises, with contracting, pipes clicking, the soft groan of the structure settling. But beneath all of it, there was something else, a low, persistent vibration I couldn't identify. Not mechanical. Not quite. It felt alive. I didn't like that thought. I stood and moved slowly through the apartment, checking windows, checking the door, checking the small bathroom at the back, even though I knew nothing could be hiding there. Every movement felt too loud. Every shadow looked too deep. At one point, I paused beside the door and placed my palm flat against the wood. It was cold, colder than it should have been, like the hallway air was seeping through. I pressed my ear against it again. Nothing at first. Then, faintly, a sound. Not a voice this time. A scrape. Slow. Drawn out. Like something being dragged along the floor. My breath caught. The sound passed my door without stopping. It moved steadily down the hall, the faint drag followed by a wet, irregular rhythm, like footsteps that didn't quite land evenly. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I waited until the sound faded completely, swallowed by distance. Then I backed away from the door slowly, every nerve on fire. My eyes drifted to the clock on the wall. 3:17 a.m., the longest hour of the night. I sat back down, knees pulled close, forcing my breathing to slow. My head felt heavy, thoughts looping in tight circles. The voice at the door, the figure in the hall, the instructions, the missing messages, the silence outside. None of it fit together, but all of it felt connected. A dull ache spread behind my eyes. Exhaustion crept in, slow and heavy, trying to drag me under. I fought it. Sleep felt dangerous, like surrendering control. My eyelids still slipped, just for a second, and in that second, I heard something new. A whisper, not through the door, not from the hallway, closer, like it was right behind me. Still awake? My entire body went cold. My eyes snapped open. The apartment was empty. The lamp flickered once. Then everything went quiet again, but the silence wasn't comforting anymore. It felt like something was waiting for me to make a mistake. Rationing and planning. I didn't turn around right away. Every instinct screamed at me to move, to check behind me, to prove that the whisper hadn't come from inside the room. But another part of me, the part still clinging to reason, whispered back that if I panicked, I'd start seeing things that weren't there. so I stayed still. I counted my breaths. Slow, measured, one at a time. When I finally turned my head, the space behind me was empty. No shadow, no movement, no shape pressed into the dark. The corner looked exactly the same as it had all night, but the feeling didn't go away. The sensation of being watched lingered, heavy and deliberate, like a pressure on the back of my neck. I forced myself to stand. If I stayed frozen any longer, fear would hollow me out. I needed structure, something to focus on besides the idea that the walls might not be as empty as they looked. I walked to the kitchen and opened every cabinet. I didn't rush. I counted everything. 4 cans of beans, 2 cans of soup, a half bag of rice, a jar of peanut butter, half a loaf of bread, already starting to go stale, 3 bottles of water, 1 nearly empty. I swallowed. Not enough for 30 days. Not even close. My mind started working automatically, rationing, calculating, planning, small portions, controlled intake, no waste. Survival wasn't dramatic. It was math and discipline. I checked the sink. Water still ran. That was something. I filled every container I could find, bottles, bowls, a pot, anything that would hold liquid. I didn't know if the water would stay on, and I didn't want to find out the hard way. Next, I searched the apartment for anything useful. A flashlight, batteries, a small first aid kit buried under the bathroom sink, a pocket knife I'd almost forgotten I owned. I laid everything out on the table, grouping items like they mattered because they did now. Food, water, tools, small pieces of control in a situation built on uncertainty. Every action steadied me a little. Planning made the fear smaller. It didn't disappear, but it became something I could work around. I moved to the windows and checked the locks again, pressing my palm against the glass. Cold seeped through, steady and sharp. Outside, the street remained unnervingly still. No traffic, no distant voices. The delivery truck from earlier was gone. I didn't know when it had left. That realization unsettled me more than it should have. I checked the front door next, testing the locks without making noise. The metal felt solid beneath my fingers. I slid a chair beneath the handle. Not because I thought it would stop someone determined, but because it made me feel less exposed. Then I stood in the middle of the room and listened. Nothing. No scraping. No footsteps. No voices pretending to be familiar. Just silence pressing in from every side. I sat at the table, staring at the note again. The words hadn't changed, but they felt heavier now, like they carried more weight each time I read them. Do not open the door. Do not trust voices. Survive 30 days. I try to imagine who could have written it. Someone who knew this was coming. Someone who understood the rules of whatever was happening outside. Someone who knew I would need this warning. Why me? The thought hit hard. There were dozens of apartments in this building. Hundreds in this block. Why did that envelope end up at my door? Was it random? Or was it intentional? A faint sound snapped me out of the spiral. Not from the hall, but from the wall behind me. A soft, rhythmic tapping. Not random. Deliberate. Tap. Pause. Tap, tap. Pause. I turned slowly. The sound came again. Not from the hallway. From the apartment next door. Signals from outside. The tapping came again. Soft, measured. Not random. Not the kind of noise old pipes make, or walls settling. This was deliberate, a pattern, not an accident. Tap, pause. Tap, tap, pause. My pulse picked up. I stood slowly, moving closer to the wall, without making a sound. The paint was cold under my fingertips. The wall felt thin. Suddenly, like the only thing between me and whoever was on the other side was a layer of brittle plaster. Tap, pause. Tap, tap. It repeated. Exact timing. Exact rhythm. I hesitated, then lifted my hand and tapped back once. A single knock. Silence followed. Heavy, waiting silence. Then the response came instantly. Tap, tap. My throat tightened. Someone was there. Someone alive. Someone who understood pattern communication. Intent. Relief rushed through me so fast it made my knees weak. I wasn't completely alone. I swallowed and tapped again, slower this time. Tap. Tap, tap. The reply came almost immediately. Tap, tap. Not random. Not echo. A response. I closed my eyes for a second, try and control the flow of emotions. Relief, hope, fear all tangling together. But the moment didn't last, because right after the second tap, something else reached my ears. A faint hum, not from the wall, from the air. I turned my head slowly toward the small radio on the table. The static had changed. It wasn't random noise anymore. There was structure beneath it. Faint pulses, uneven frequencies, something that almost sounded like words struggling to form. I moved to it slowly, heart hammering. The dial hadn't moved. I hadn't touched it since earlier, yet the sound was different now. Asian zones, avoid contact, repeat, do not approach. If you hear voices, do not respond. The words surfaced through layers of static, thin and broken. My chest tightened. I leaned closer, barely breathing. Contamination, symptoms very mimicry, stay inside. A chill slid down my spine. Mimicry. The word hit like a blow. The voice cut in and out, fragmented by waves of distortion. Whoever was broadcasting was far away, or using a failing system. Remain in place, lockdown. If anyone attempts entry, do not open. My heart pounded so hard I could barely hear over it. Then the signal stuttered. A long burst of static surged, drowning everything. I adjusted the dial, desperate to hold on to the voice, but the words dissolved into noise. Wait, I whispered, as if the voice could hear me. The radio crackled one last time, then fell silent. Dead air. My hands shook. I stood frozen for several seconds, trying to process what I'd just heard. The instructions in the broadcast matched the letter too closely to be coincidence. Someone knew what was happening. Someone was trying to warn people. But the warning was fragmented, broken, like whatever system carried it was collapsing. The tapping on the wall started again, sharper this time, urgent. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. Not calm anymore. Not slow. A signal. A warning. My heartbeat spiked. I tapped back quickly, my pulse racing. One tap. Pause. One tap. The response came instantly. Rapid tapping, uneven now, desperate. Something had changed. Something was wrong. Then, from the hallway beyond my door, I heard it again. That dragging sound. Slow. Heavy. Not footsteps. Not exactly. Something being pulled. And it was getting closer. The other survivor. The dragging sound grew louder, scraping along the hallway floor in slow, uneven bursts. Whatever it was getting closer. I pressed my palm against the wall, hoping the person on the other side could somehow feel the urgency through plaster. The tapping started again. Tap, 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 tap. No pause this time. Fast. Panicked. I hear it too. I whispered, even though I knew they couldn't hear my voice through the wall. The dragging stopped just outside my door. My lungs locked. The room shrank. The air felt like it was pushing against me from all directions. Then something wet slid across the bottom of my door. Not liquid exactly. More like something heavy being dragged slowly, brushing against the wood. The door vibrated faintly. A dull thud like weight settling against it. My breath caught. On the other side of the wall, the tapping stopped. For a heartbeat, there was no sound at all. Then a single, careful tap came through the wall. Slow, deliberate, a signal. I lifted my hand, shaking, and tapped back once. The reply came almost instantly. Tap, tap. A small relief broke through the fear. Whoever they were still there, still alive. But the thing outside my door hadn't left. I heard a faint shift. Something adjusting position, weight scraping against the floor again. Then a low, strained sound, almost like breathing, but wrong. Too irregular, too wet, like lungs filling with something they shouldn't. My chest tightened until it hurt. I forced myself not to move, not to make a sound. I didn't dare breathe too loudly. Seconds stretched. Sweat slid down my back, despite the cold in the room. Then, slowly, the pressure against the door eased. The dragging resumed, slow, uneven, moving away from my door and further down the hall. I waited until the sound faded completely. Only then did I let myself inhale. My legs gave out, and I dropped to my knees, gripping the carpet like it could keep me grounded. My heartbeat hammered, so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. I turned toward the wall again and tapped once. Tap. Silence. Then, faint but clear, came the response. Tap, tap. I exhaled shakily. Whoever was on the other side was still alive, still communicating. I pressed my forehead lightly against the wall, speaking in the lowest voice I could manage. I don't know who you are, I whispered, but I'm here. I knew they couldn't hear me, but saying it made the isolation feel slightly less crushing. Then the tapping came again. Slow this time. Intentional. Tap. Pause. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap. A pattern. Not random. A message. I tried to make sense of it, to translate it, but fear and exhaustion blurred my focus. Still, one thing was clear. They were trying to communicate, trying to warn me. I swallowed and tapped back carefully. Tap, tap. Then I heard it. A faint, distorted voice. Not through the door this time. Not from the hallway. Through the wall. Muffled. Weak. But unmistakably human. Don't trust them. My blood went cold. I leaned closer, straining to hear more. The voice came again, barely audible. They copy voices. A chill tore down my spine. I remembered the voice outside my door earlier. Marcus's voice, perfectly imitated. My stomach twisted. The person behind the wall spoke again, but the words dissolved into static-like distortion, swallowed by the hum in the building. Then silence. No tapping. No voice. No movement. I stayed there, frozen, mind spinning. Copy voices. Mimic. That word from the broadcast slammed back into my head. Mimicry. The realization settled like ice in my veins. Whatever was out there didn't just hunt. It learned. It imitated. And it knew how to sound like someone you'd open the door for. The broken window. I stayed pressed against the wall long after the voice faded. My forehead rested on the cold plaster, my breathing shallow, my thoughts spiraling. The words wouldn't stop echoing. They copy voices. The idea burrowed deep, rewriting every sound I'd heard, every instinct I'd almost followed. The voice that sounded like Marcus. The woman begging at my door. The perfectly timed knocks. None of it was coincidence. It was bait. My stomach tightened until it hurt. I lifted my hand to tap again, to ask the person on the other side if they were still there, but before my knuckles touched the wall, a sharp sound shattered the quiet. Glass breaking, not a distant crack or a faint shatter. Loud, close, the kind of sharp, violent break that cuts through every layer of thought. It came from downstairs. My entire body tensed. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The echo rolled up to the stairwell, bouncing off concrete and metal. It wasn't just one window. More followed, jagged, collapsing bursts of sound, like something large and heavy was forcing its way through. My heart slammed in my chest. The building, which had felt dead for hours, suddenly felt alive with movement. Below me, something slammed into a wall. Hard. The impact reverberated through the floor, a dull, concussive thud that rattled the door on its hinges. Then came the voices. Not screams at first. Shouts. Sharp, overlapping, desperate. Human. Someone yelled for help. Someone else cursed, panic rising in every syllable. The words were distorted by distance and echo, but the fear in them was unmistakable. My hands curled into fists. Part of me wanted to run to the door, to help, to do something. Another part, the part that had read the instructions, the part that had listened to the mimic speak, screamed at me to stay exactly where I was. A heavy crash followed, closer now. Something big hit the stairwell door below, metal screeching against its frame. The sound carried up the walls like a vibration in my bones. The shouting turned chaotic. Footsteps pounded. Something scraped. A body hit the floor hard enough to knock the breath from whoever it belonged to. I heard the hollow gasp even through the concrete. Then a scream. Short, cut off too fast. My breath caught in my throat. Silence followed, sudden and unnatural. No footsteps retreating. No voices continuing. Just a vacuum where noise should have been. The kind of silence that isn't absence, but aftermath. I didn't move. I didn't even swallow. I stared at the door as if I could see through it. as if I could understand what had just happened without ever opening it. Slowly, the hum in the building returned, that low, steady vibration beneath everything, like the walls themselves were alive. I forced my breath to slow. The instinct to run, to open the door, to help whoever had been downstairs, fought with a growing understanding that rushing out there wasn't bravery. It was suicide. The person through the wall tapped once. A single, sharp knock. Not a pattern. A warning. My pulse hammered. Then, faintly, so faint I almost missed it, came a sound from the stairwell. Not footsteps. Not dragging. A soft, deliberate tapping. Tap, tap. A pause. Tap. My skin went cold. It wasn't random. It was the same rhythm the person through the wall had used earlier. The same pattern. Something downstairs was copying the knocks, learning them, repeating them. My mouth went dry. Whatever was out there wasn't just mimicking voices. It was learning behavior. The choice. The tapping from the stairwell continued. Not frantic, not hesitant, measured, deliberate. Tap, pause, tap, tap, pause, tap. The exact same pattern I had used to talk to the person through the wall. My lungs went tight. The air felt thin, like I was breathing through a cloth. My mind scrambled for explanations, for anything that could turn this into something rational. Coincidence. Someone else trapped. Someone trying to communicate. But I already knew the truth. It was learning, copying, adapting. The wall beside me stayed silent. Whoever had been tapping earlier wasn't answering now. That scared me more than anything. If they weren't responding, it meant one of two things. They were hiding, or they couldn't answer anymore. My hands curled into fists. Sweat slicked my palms. Another set of taps came from the stairwell, louder this time. Closer, as if something was moving up the steps, repeating the pattern while it climbed. My pulse thundered. I stepped backward until my shoulder hit the wall. My gaze locked on the door like it might burst open any second. Then, finally, the person through the wall responded. A single tap. Faint. Uneven. Alive. Relief hit me so hard my knees almost gave. I tapped back immediately. Tap. Tap. The reply came weaker this time. Tap. Something was wrong. Their rhythm was slower. Their timing off. Then faintly, through the wall, came a voice, low, strained, barely audible. Leaving. My breath caught. I leaned closer, pressing my ear against the plaster. What? Silence. Then another whisper. Can't stay, they're coming up. I slid down my spine. I shook my head instinctively, even though they couldn't see me. No. I whispered. Don't go. Stay quiet. Stay where you are. My heart pounded. The stairwell tapping grew louder, echoing now, bouncing up the metal railing. Whatever was making that sound was climbing. Slow, patient, relentless. The person behind the wall spoke again, voice thin and cracking. Not safe here. A heavy sound followed, the scrape of something being moved, maybe furniture, a barricade being pushed aside. Panic clawed at my throat. Don't open your door, I hissed, pressing my mouth close to the wall. Don't go into the hallway. Listen to me. Don't. A loud thud cut me off. Not from my apartment. From theirs. Something hit their door hard enough to shake the wall between us. My breath froze. Another impact followed. Then another. Not random. Not blind. Focused. Targeted. The person on the other side let out a sharp, involuntary gasp. Not a scream, but close enough to send fear tearing through me. I slammed my palm against the wall, heart racing. Stay quiet. I whispered urgently. Don't move. Don't make noise. But the tapping from the stairwell had reached our floor now. It echoed right outside. Tap. Pause. Tap tap. Mimicking. Perfectly. Then, from the other side of the wall, I heard the worst sound yet. The click of a lock turning. My stomach dropped. No. I breathed. No, don't. The handle on their door creaked. A second later, the hallway erupted with movement. Fast, chaotic, wrong. Something heavy slammed into the wall. A muffled cry followed, cut short in a way that made my chest constrict. Then silence. Absolute silence. No struggle. No footsteps. No breathing. Nothing. My hands shook uncontrollably. My throat felt tight, raw. I stayed frozen, waiting, praying to hear a tap from the other side of the wall. One tap. Any tap. Seconds stretched into a full minute. Then 2. Then 5. No response came. My heart sank like a stone. The silence on the other side wasn't hiding anymore. It was final, and the thing that had climbed the stairs was now somewhere on my floor. Consequences. I didn't move for a long time. My palm stayed pressed against the wall. Like if I kept it there long enough, I might feel a pulse, a vibration, anything to prove the person next door was still alive. Nothing came back. Not a tap, not a breath, not a scrape. Just a dead, empty stillness that pressed into my bones. My chest felt hollow, like something vital had been scooped out and left behind a cold ache. The urge to knock, to whisper, to beg for a sign was overwhelming. But the memory of the thing copying our taps kept my hand frozen. Silence wasn't safety anymore, but sound felt like a death sentence. A faint scuff from the hallway snapped my focus back. Not the slow drag from before. Lighter, careful, like something trying to move quietly, but not quite getting it right. My breath stalled. It passed my door once. Then again, a slow back and forth, almost like pacing. The handle didn't move this time. No knock, no voice, just the faintest scrape of something brushing the floor, followed by a soft click that made my stomach drop. The door across the hall. My neighbor's apartment. I knew that sound, the sound of a latch shifting under weight. The kind of soft metallic click that happens when a door isn't quite closed and something nudges it open. A cold wave rolled down my spine. There had been someone alive in that apartment an hour ago. Someone tapping. Someone warning me. Now there was only the sound of something moving inside their space. A muffled thud followed. Something heavy being moved. Or dropped. Then a wet, uneven sound. Too soft to identify. Too wrong to ignore. I swallowed hard and forced myself to breathe through my nose, slow and quiet. The thought of what might be happening on the other side of the wall twisted my stomach, but I shoved it down. Panic would only make me careless. Carelessness would get me killed. The sound stopped after a few seconds. Then, slowly, the footsteps resumed, dragging slightly, heading farther down the hall, not toward the stairs, toward the end of the corridor. My muscles loosened a fraction, but I didn't move, not until the silence stretched long enough to feel real. I exhaled slowly, shaking. I forced myself to stand, legs unsteady, and stepped back from the wall. My body felt hollow, like it had burned through all its strength just to stay still. My eyes drifted to the note on the counter again. The words blurred, then sharpened. Do not open the door. Do not trust voices. Survive 30 days. 30 days. The thought felt absurd now. It had barely been 1 day, and already someone next door was gone. My gaze slid toward the window. For a moment, I considered it. Climbing out, taking the fire escape, risking the street instead of whatever was moving inside this building. The idea flickered like a desperate spark, but the instructions echoed again. Do not leave. And beneath the fear, a colder thought settled in. Whoever wrote that note had known what would happen inside this building, which meant the outside might be worse. I stood there, trapped between two terrors, the danger inside and the unknown outside, and realized with sickening clarity, there was no safe direction anymore, only choices. And every choice carried consequences I wasn't ready to face. Understanding the rules. I sat back down at the table and pulled the note closer, my hands still unsteady. The paper felt heavier now, like the words had gained weight since the last time I touched it. I read it again slowly, line by line, forcing my mind to slow down and stop spiraling. Do not leave your apartment for 30 days. Do not open the door for anyone. Do not trust voices outside the door, even if they sound familiar. Keep lights low after sunset. Record anything unusual. Survive 30 days. Before, the rules had felt vague, almost paranoid. Now they felt precise. Not advice, instructions. Whoever wrote this hadn't been guessing. They had expected everything that happened tonight. The voices, the mimicry, the pressure to open the door, the isolation, the psychological tricks. Even the urge to run, the realization sent a chill down my spine. These weren't general survival tips. They were countermeasures. Each instruction aligned perfectly with what I'd experienced. Don't open the door, because something out there mimics voices. Don't trust familiar voices, because it can copy people I know. Keep lights low, because visibility might attract it. Record anything unusual, because memory under stress becomes unreliable. This wasn't a warning written in fear. It was a system built from observation. Someone had studied this, documented it, tested it. My breath slowed as a darker thought settled in. If someone knew enough to write these rules, then this had happened before. Not exactly like this, maybe, but similar enough for patterns to exist. That meant this wasn't random chaos. It wasn't a freak incident. It was a known phenomenon, a process, and that implied something even worse. If someone understood this enough to prepare instructions, then someone else had failed before me. The idea hit hard. Someone had already faced this and didn't make it. My throat tightened. I flipped the page over, checking the back again, hoping I'd missed something earlier, a signature, a code, anything. But the back was blank. No sender, no origin, no explanation, just the rules. A bitter thought surfaced. They knew enough to warn me, but not enough to stop it. Or maybe stopping it was never the point. Maybe survival was the only realistic outcome. A soft creak echoed from the hallway. My body locked up instantly. I turned my head toward the door. Breath held. Silence followed. No dragging. No tapping. No voice. Just a faint, persistent hum running through the building. I forced myself to focus, to push back the rising fear. Panic made mistakes. Mistakes got people killed. I looked at the note again. Try to read it not as a frightened person, but as someone trying to decode a system. The rules weren't just about defense. They were about behavior control. Don't respond to voices. Prevents manipulation. Don't open the door. Prevents direct contact. Stay inside. Limits exposure. Keep lights low. Reduces detection. Document anomalies. Preserves sanity and creates pattern recognition. The instructions weren't written to keep me comfortable. They were written to keep me alive long enough to adapt. That meant whoever wrote this new fear would push me to break the rules. They expected fear. They designed around it. I felt a cold, reluctant respect for whoever had left the envelope, and a sharper fear. Because if they knew this much, then the thing outside wasn't just dangerous. It was predictable. It followed patterns. And if it followed patterns, it could learn mine. My stomach tightened. A faint sound rose from the hallway again. Not a scrape, not a knock. A soft, low whisper. Too quiet to understand, but not far away. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't breathe. I only listened. Because if it was learning me, I needed to learn it faster. Reality distortion. Time stopped feeling linear after that. Minutes didn't pass the way they were supposed to. They stretched thin, snapped back, then stretched again like worn elastic. I kept checking clock, but every time I looked, the numbers felt wrong. Too slow, then suddenly too fast. My body didn't trust time anymore. The silence in the apartment wasn't normal either. It didn't sit still. It pulsed. Some moments felt so quiet I could hear my own pulse in my ears. Other moments felt like the air was vibrating, like a sound existed just beyond the range of hearing. The hum in the walls didn't go away. It lingered beneath everything, faint but constant, like a current moving through the bones of the building. I pressed my hand to the wall once and swore I felt it. A subtle tremor that wasn't mechanical. Sleep was an option. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the smear on the hallway wall, the tilted head in the stairwell, the motionless men by the taxi, the shape that slid out of sight. Images stitched themselves together in my mind, trying to form patterns I couldn't fully grasp. I started writing things down, not because I wanted a record, because I was afraid I'd forget what was real. I wrote the rules, the timeline, the voices, the behavior patterns, every anomaly, every sound, even the things I wasn't sure had happened. The longer I wrote, the more the line between memory and imagination blurred. At some point, I couldn't tell whether the whisper behind me earlier had been real or just a misfired neuron under stress. My eyes kept drifting to the dark corners of the room, half expecting movement that never came. Then came the worst part. My own thoughts started sounding foreign. Not hallucinations. Not voices. Just wrong. Like certain ideas didn't feel like they originated in my own head. They arrived fully formed, cold and detached. Open the door. The thought hit, so suddenly that my hand twitched. My heart spiked, breath catching. I hadn't been thinking about the door. I hadn't been considering opening it. But the idea had arrived anyway. Clear and intrusive. I shook my head hard. No. My voice sounded too loud in the quiet room. A second thought followed almost immediately. Just check the hallway. My stomach dropped. I pressed my palms against my temples, squeezing my eyes shut. No. I whispered. Not mine. Not mine. The thoughts weren't mine. They didn't feel like mine. They didn't come with emotion or context. They just appeared, like someone dropping commands into my head. A cold realization settled over me. If it could mimic voices, could it influence thoughts? Or was isolation already breaking me? The uncertainty clawed at my chest. I forced myself to focus on something real. I counted my breaths. I named objects in the room. Chair, table, window, lamp, my own hands. Reality stabilized a little. The intrusive thoughts faded, leaving behind a hollow ache and a tremor in my hands. Then, without warning, the radio crackled to life. A burst of static tore through the room, sharp enough to make me flinch. I stared at it, heart hammering. Through the static came fragments of sound, faint, distorted. Don't respond. Copying patterns. If you hear yourself. The signal cut abruptly. Silence swallowed the room again. A chill slid down my spine. If I hear myself, my mouth went dry. The implication twisted in my stomach. It didn't just mimic others. It could mimic me. And if I ever heard my own voice from outside that door, I knew exactly what would be trying to do. Get me to open it. Final log. I don't know what day it is anymore. The clock still moves. The numbers still change. But time feels fake now. Like something painted over a wall that's already cracked underneath. I've stopped trying to track hours. I only track one thing now. Survival. I've started recording everything. Every sound, every movement, every thought that feels wrong. If I don't write it down, it slips away, dissolving into the blur of fear and exhaustion. And I can't afford to forget anything, because forgetting feels like losing pieces of myself. The food is almost gone. I've been rationing every bite, but hunger doesn't care about logic. It crawls through me constantly now, a slow, gnawing thing that makes every decision heavier. Sleep comes in pieces. Short, broken fragments that leave me more tired than before. Every time I close my eyes, I feel watched. Every time I wake up, I'm not sure if the last thing I heard was real or imagined. The hum in the building hasn't stopped. It pulses faintly through the walls, constant, like a reminder that something is still out there. Sometimes I think it's growing louder. Other times I'm sure it's my own head playing tricks on me. I haven't heard from the person through the wall again. No tapping, no voice, no movement. I don't know if they're gone or just quiet. I don't know which scares me more. The hallway hasn't stayed silent either. Sometimes I hear dragging. Sometimes faint tapping. Sometimes nothing for hours. Then a sudden sound that freezes me where I stand. I've learned to stop reacting. Movement attracts attention. Sound invites danger. I've stopped going near the door. Even looking at it makes my chest tighten. Because something has changed in the last day. The voices aren't outside anymore. They're closer. Sometimes I hear my name whispered softly. Not through the door, but like it's in the air around me. Sometimes I catch half-formed words, spoken too quietly to understand, like something practicing language in fragments. And sometimes when the silence stretches too long, I hear my own voice, not in my head, from the other side of the door. Same tone, same cadence, same pauses between words, like listening to a recording of myself that I never made. The first time it happened, I froze so hard my lungs forgot how to work. It said, "I think it's safe now." The words were gentle, calm, reassuring, the exact way I would speak to myself if I was trying to survive. That's when I understood the final piece. It doesn't just mimic voices to lure you. It learns you. The more you speak, the more it copies. The longer you survive, the more accurate it becomes. It doesn't just want you to open the door. It wants you to believe it's safe to do so. I don't speak out loud anymore. I don't make unnecessary noise. I don't answer anything, not even myself, because I don't trust what I might hear in return. I don't know how many days have passed since the envelope arrived. The world outside could be gone. The city could be empty. Or maybe life is continuing somewhere else, and I'm the only one trapped in this nightmare. I don't know if anyone will ever hear this recording. If someone does, then maybe you're in the same situation I am. If you are, listen carefully. Do not trust familiar voices. Do not open the door. Do not assume silence means safety. Do not let it learn you. And above all else, if you ever hear yourself calling from the other side of the door, do not answer, no matter how real it sounds. Because by the time it sounds exactly like you, it's already too late.